Cody always took food very seriously on our trips and he was a great cook. I always let him take care of the cooking and of course we had bear spray in case the smell attracted any. But Cody always said that the chances of a bear showing up were very slim. He said that the biggest concern in the woods was other people. While we ate our steaks and burgers, we cracked open a few beers and put on some classic rock on the speakers. If you've never been camping, you might not understand how special these moments are. Being out in nature with a friend or family member, drinking a beer, reminiscing, and enjoying the music is incredible. When it got dark, we started playing cards on a folding table we brought just for that purpose. After a few traditional games, we decided to play Uno. That's when we heard something strange in the woods. I stopped the music on my phone and everything went silent. Suddenly, we heard someone humming and footsteps coming from the darkness of the forest. Cody asked me to get my flashlight, but by the time I found it, the sounds had stopped. I asked Cody if we should be worried, and he said it was really weird for someone to be so deep in the woods at that hour, let alone walking around and singing near our campsite. I was a little scared and I could tell Cody was too. We tried to go back to playing cards but with the music much lower. When we least expected it, a large stick fell in the middle of our campsite. It hadn't fallen from a tree, someone had thrown it at us. Cody yelled, "Whoever's out there, stop bothering us and go away." Then we heard footsteps moving away in the darkness. I suggested we break camp and leave, but Cody said no, especially in the dark. He told me to keep my bear spray close by in my tent, since it was the closest thing we had to a gun. We kept hearing strange sounds like branches breaking, but they were noises that didn't sound like an animal. Someone or maybe several people were out there. We decided we needed to sleep at some point, so we arranged to take turns standing guard. Cody said he would stay up and read a book while I slept. I curled up in my sleeping bag inside the tent and tried to sleep, but I woke up in the middle of the night. When you're camping, it's normal to wake up because of the cold or the uncomfortable sleeping bag, but I still didn't know what exactly had woken me up. Still groggy and with my mind clouded, I woke up with the feeling that something wasn't right. I opened my eyes and to my surprise, saw a head peering into my tent. The face was hidden by the darkness, and my blurred vision allowed me to only make out the silhouette. In my drowsy state, I thought it was Cody, perhaps calling me to take over the watch. In a weak and confused voice I murmured, "Cody? Is it my turn?" The figure stood there, motionless, watching me for what seemed like an eternity. As the haze of sleep began to lift, my mind began to wake, growing more alert. Then, without warning, the tent zipped shut, and my head disappeared into the darkness of the night. For a moment, I almost lay back down, thinking that maybe I was just dreaming or that Cody was playing a trick on me. But suddenly, a chill ran up my spine, and a frightening clarity washed over me. Something was very wrong. I jumped up and heard quick footsteps moving away from the campsite. I called out for Cody, but all I heard was the silence of the forest. I unzipped my tent with a knot in my stomach, already expecting the worst. Outside, the campfire was out, and the air was thick with an unsettling stillness. Cody was nowhere to be found. I felt my heart race. Fear was starting to take over me, but I took a deep breath and walked over to his tent. When I unzipped it and looked inside, there was Cody, fast asleep, curled up in his sleeping bag. A cold shiver ran through my body. What I had seen wasn't Cody. In desperation, I started shaking him to wake him up. Cody woke up confused, blinking his eyes as he tried to understand what I was saying. I spoke quickly, trying to explain that someone had been there at the camp, watching us. It took him a few seconds to absorb what I was saying, and then I saw him truly wake up, his eyes widening. He grabbed the bear spray, which was the only thing we had to defend ourselves. He admitted that he must have dozed off while reading and now he was worried. He suggested that I sleep in his tent, where we would be safer. But to do that, I would need to get my sleeping bag from my tent. We went out together with him holding the bear spray and looking around, alert for any movement that I ran to my tent, and as I was inside grabbing my sleeping bag, I heard that strange buzzing sound again coming from somewhere outside the tent. My heart was beating so fast it felt like it was trying to burst out of my chest. I grabbed my sleeping bag and quickly got out. Cody whispered to me to hurry. When I got to him, I asked, "Did you hear that too?" He just nodded, his eyes full of concern. We quickly went back to Cody's tent and zipped it up. We both lay there, the cans of bear spray at our sides as if they were our last line of defense. The fear was palpable. Every sound in the forest seemed amplified, every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made us tense. I kept wondering what could be out there, what had spied us. With every passing minute, I prayed for a bear to show up, as if the presence of a dangerous animal was better than the dark mystery that surrounded us. The hours dragged on. With each passing minute, I felt more exhausted, but fear wouldn't let me close my eyes. Finally, after 3 endless hours, I woke Cody up so we could switch shifts. When he woke me again, the sky was already starting to lighten. It was a relief to see the daylight filtering through the trees. We began to pack up in silence, still shaken by what had happened. While we could have driven somewhere else and continued our adventure, neither of us was willing to spend another night in the woods. That experience had been too scary. All we wanted was to get back to the safety of our homes. It's been 6 years since that night, and although Cody has invited me to go camping again a few times, I've never felt like going. The memory of that head peering into my tent, with that unsettling silence, still haunts me. People can be much scarier than any beast in the woods. I don't know if I'll ever be able to go camping again. Maybe never. When my friends and I rented a beach house in Florida, I never imagined the trip would be so strange. The 4 of us crammed into the car and drove there excitedly. The house we rented was on a road with the bay on one side and the beach in the backyard, right behind the house. The houses around it were quite different, some huge and others smaller and more simple. Ours was one of the more modest ones with 4 bedrooms, one for each of us. The road was very quiet and the houses were quite far apart from each other, which gave a nice feeling of privacy. As we were unloading the car, we noticed that no cars had passed by the whole time. The inside of the house was simple but pleasant and clean. The owners really got into the beach vibe with the decor, with themed paintings on the walls and even a decorative surfboard propped up in the corner of the living room behind the TV. From the living room, you could step out onto the back deck, which had an incredible view of the beach. The deck was just a few steps from the sand, which was perfect. After we checked into our rooms, mine had a beach view which I loved. The first thing we did was run down to the sand. We spent hours there, splashing around in the water and playing soccer. It was like the beach was ours to ourselves, except for an older couple at the end of the beach. When we got hungry, we went out for dinner and then bar hopped around the city, enjoying the nightlife. By the time we got back in the Uber, it was already pretty dark. We decided to go back to the beach for a walk and another round of soccer, even though we were a little drunk. As I was chasing the ball I had kicked wrong, something in the water caught my eye. The moonlight reflected off the ocean, and that's when I realized it. "What's that?" I said out loud. When I looked closer, I saw that it was a person standing waist deep in the water. My friends looked too and confirmed that I wasn't making it up. It was a little strange since it was after midnight, but we figured, if a local wants to go for a midnight swim, who are we to judge? So, after relaxing on the deck with a few beers for a while, we started to get tired. One by one, my friends went inside to sleep. It was just me and John outside enjoying the night breeze. Every now and then, I would glance in the direction I had seen the person in the water earlier, just out of curiosity. And then, all of a sudden, I saw someone standing on the beach right there staring at us. It was kind of creepy. Maybe it was a neighbor, but I wasn't sure. Could it be the same person from before? We tried to ignore it, but John couldn't stop staring at the figure. After a while, he said that the person was still there, staring at us. I got up to look and he was right. The person was standing still, not moving. I couldn't help but shout, "Everything okay out there?" John asked why I did that, and the truth is that I didn't even know what I expected. We didn't get any answers. At that moment, the atmosphere got really weird, so we decided to go inside. Travis and Liam were already in their rooms, probably passed out from drinking too much. John and I decided to call it a night too, since we wanted to make the most of the next day. It must have been around midnight, maybe 1 in the morning. It was still early, but we were exhausted. After brushing my teeth, I went to my room and decided to take one last look at the ocean before going to sleep. But what I saw outside gave me the creeps. There was now someone standing right in front of the back deck, facing the house. It looked like the person was looking directly at my window. From the silhouette, it looked like it was a man, and it was almost certainly the same person from before. I called out for John, but he didn't answer, so I ran to his room and knocked on the door, telling him to come out quickly. He came and I took him to my window to see, but the person had already disappeared. I swore to John that it was the same person who had been there before, standing in the same spot. He believed me, but neither of us wanted to go out and check it out. I took one more look to make sure no one was there, and then I closed the curtain. Still, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking. Who was that person? Why was he spying on us? As I tried to sleep, I heard something that made me freeze in fear, a tapping on my bedroom window. My heart nearly stopped. I lay still, unable to move. Then I heard another series of soft tapping on the glass. I didn't have the courage to lift the curtain to see who it was. I almost yelled, "Who's there?" but I controlled myself. Instead, I ran out of the room, yelling for everyone to wake up. Everyone ran out of their rooms in a panic. When we checked the window, there was no one there. We all went out onto the deck, turned on the lights and looked out at the beach, but we saw nothing. We also checked the front and sides of the house. Nothing. John and I explained to Travis and Liam what they had missed while they were sleeping. We decided to leave the backyard lights on for the rest of the night. The next day, John and I went to the nearest neighbors to ask if they had heard anyone knocking on their windows or doors. One of the neighbors said that the week before, someone had knocked on his door in the middle of the night, but didn't answer when he asked who it was. The person just kept knocking. He didn't open the door. I don't know if it was the same person, but if it was, that made it even more spooky. We spent the rest of the day at the beach, exploring the nearby towns and visiting bars. Nothing else happened that night, and the next day we left. I still wonder what I would have seen if I had raised the curtains that night. I was 9 years old when it happened, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was home alone one night, playing video games in my room. I knew I couldn't answer the door to anyone when I was alone. Usually when my mom left, she wouldn't stay long. Maybe she was at the grocery store or something. That night, I was completely immersed in Metroid Prime on my GameCube. It was my favorite game at the time. Suddenly, the house phone started ringing downstairs. My mom always told me to answer it if it rang in case it was her. So I dropped the controller and ran to answer it. I think I picked it up on the fourth ring. My mom's cell phone showed up on the caller ID. "Honey, can you come help me with the groceries outside?" she said. I said, "Mom?" She said yes, but there was something strange about her voice. Even though she was just a boy, I could tell that her voice didn't sound exactly like my mom's. I asked, "Why does your voice sound like that?" She answered again, "Honey," and that's when something really scared me. My mother never used the word honey like that, especially not twice in such a short space of time. Without thinking twice, I hung up the phone. My heart was beating so fast I could barely think. A moment later, the phone rang again, and once again my mother's number appeared on the caller ID. But this time I didn't answer. Something told me something was wrong. I sat in the kitchen, my heart racing, waiting to see what would happen. After a few minutes, the phone rang a third time, but this time the number was different. With shaking hands, I answered. On the other end of the line, a male voice said, "Hey James. I know this is going to sound weird, but I'm your dad. I'm outside." I didn't know what to say. All I could manage was a weak mumble. The man on the phone said, "I'm outside. I have a lot to explain." At that point, I immediately hung up. My father had died when I was only 3 years old, and I had no memory of him. Then my suspicions were confirmed. The first voice I heard was not my mother's. The phone rang again and once more after that. I ignored it each time it rang, my heart racing. I couldn't even call my mother because someone clearly had her phone. The situation got even worse when I heard knocking on the front door. What had previously been just a mystery about who had my mother's phone, now became something much more frightening. Someone was outside our house. My mother wouldn't knock on the door, she had the key of course. I peered through the kitchen wall to try to see the front door. That's when I heard the muffled voice of a man on the other side, saying my name and claiming to be my father. He rang the doorbell and started trying to open the door. I did something number 9-year-old should have to do. I picked up the phone and called 911. The operator asked me a few questions that seem simple now, but the most important one was when she told me to hide in a bathroom or another room with a locked door until the police arrived. The bathroom was on the first floor of the house, and that's where I hid with the lights off. While I was there, I heard the sound of someone trying to open the window. They were trying to force their way in. Then I heard the sounds moving from one window to the next. If either of them had been unlocked, this story could have ended very differently. At some point, they must have given up before the police arrived. And I say they because it was clear there were two people involved in this. A man and a woman from what I could tell. The 911 operator told me that the police were at the front door and that it was safe to come out and find them. It wasn't until I opened the door for the officers that I hung up the phone. The police did a quick search inside and out. They asked where my mom was and if she knew anyone who might want to hurt us. I'm pretty sure I told them I thought she was out shopping or something, and that no, there wasn't anyone that I knew of. My mom drove home with my little sister in a panic when she saw the police cars out front. Her phone had been stolen, that much was clear. Our address, phone number, and other personal information were probably stored on the phone, easily accessible. Although how they knew my name is still a mystery. Maybe something on my mom's phone gave it away. It was an old Nokia flip phone. Who stole it remains a mystery, but my mom's phone's background was a picture of her with my little sister and me. That might have been enough for some creepy couple to realize that the owner of the phone was a single mom with 2 young kids, and they tried to use that to lure me out, which is absolutely disgusting and horrible. After the failed attempts to trick me, the phone was probably destroyed. Things changed a bit after that. My mother didn't leave me alone at night anymore, at least until I was a few years older.